I want you to just look around wherever you are right now. Like take a long look at the walls enclosing you, the space you're currently occupying.
Yeah, notice the specific colors you can perceive, the sounds you can hear in the background.
Right, exactly. Now, imagine for a second that the physical limits of your reality, like exactly what your eyes can process and your hands can touch, aren't just random biological accidents.
Or, the result of some slow evolutionary crawl.
Right. Imagine that those limits are actually the meticulously designed walls of a deliberate cosmic quarantine.
It's a premise that really forces us to completely dismantle how we view our day-to-day existence. I mean, we
Hmm.
walk around assuming our senses are these ultimate tools of discovery, right?
Yeah, like windows opening out into this vast, endless universe.
Exactly. But exploring the idea that our senses are actually the very mechanisms of our confinement, literally the bars of the cage,
Yeah,
it's deeply unsettling.
it really is. Well, welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to explore a really profound, mind-bending, and honestly, slightly dizzying spiritual framework.
Dizzying is a very good word for it.
Yeah. And we are pulling our insights from highly specific and really fascinating source text today. It's an excerpt from a larger work titled The Spatial Array, ninth of the 36 Bagua arrays.
Yes, and we should make it clear right up front, the author of this material is Xuefeng of Life Tianyuan.
Right, Shifeng of Life Tianyuan. And before we get too deep, for those who might not be familiar with the terminology, what exactly is a Bagua array?
Well, broadly speaking, a Bagua array is an ancient philosophical concept. It's essentially a blueprint of interconnected cosmic forces and symbols.
Okay, a cosmic blueprint.
Exactly. And in this specific text, Xuefeng of Life Tianyuan uses the concept of an array to map out this grand, inflexible blueprint of cosmic balance. He's defining reality not just by the stars, planets, and life forms we see, but by these incredibly strict, almost mathematical boundaries placed around us.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even begin to talk about how we as humans are confined within this cosmic quarantine, we really have to understand what the actual box is, right?
Right, we have to define the space.
And according to Xu Feng of Life Shanuan, our baseline assumption about the nature of space itself is just completely flawed. I mean, if you ask a random person on the street to describe space, they'll usually picture a giant, empty, static container.
Yeah, like a massive, infinite cardboard box.
Exactly, a cardboard box, and inside that box, the planets, the stars, the galaxies, they're just like marbles rolling around in the void.
Which is the classic Newtonian worldview.
Yeah.
An empty, pre-existing stage where the play of the universe takes place.
But Xu Feng proposes something entirely different.
He proposes a mechanism that operates on a completely different logic. In this framework, space only exists where there is matter and antimatter.
Wait, so it's not an empty container waiting to be filled?
Absolutely not.
Uh,
The presence of matter literally generates the space around it.
oh, wow. The text actually provides a really clear duality for this. It states that matter creates what we experience as positive space,
Yeah.
and antimatter creates negative space. And if the matter or the antimatter disappears, the space itself just ceases to exist. It collapses into nothingness.
What's fascinating here is how this completely recontextualizes our physical existence. The universe, according to this text, has no fixed size.
No static boundary.
Exactly. It constantly fluctuates. It expands and contracts dynamically based purely on the real-time state of the matter and antimatter within it. If you remove the matter, you remove the dimension itself.
So, simply by possessing a physical body, you are anchoring the specific space you occupy into existence.
You generate your space.
I keep picturing a modern video game rendering engine with this.
Oh, that's a great analogy, yeah.
Like when you play a massive open world game, the console's processor doesn't actually load the entire digital universe all at once.
No, if it tried to render every single blade of grass on the other side of the virtual planet, the system would instantly crash from memory overload.
Exactly. The world only exists exactly where your character is standing, where the code, or in our real world case, the matter is currently active. The environment shrinks and grows dynamically around the player.
Right, if you aren't actively observing the mountains in the distance, they aren't actually there as a fully realized 3D space.
They're just potential data until the rendering engine creates them.
That analogy captures the mechanics of this perfectly. The universe isn't a pre-built house we walked into. Our ongoing existence dictates the architectural footprint of reality. And Xuefeng of Life Genuine expands this concept significantly.
Right, because it's not just the universe as we see it.
No, he states that within this dynamically generated cosmos, There aren't just the three spatial dimensions and time that we experience. There are exactly 36 distinct dimensions of space.
36 dimensions. And I want to be clear here. These aren't parallel universes where a slightly different version of you is eating a different breakfast.
Right, not a multiverse concept.
Right. These are 36 entirely distinct spatial structures, each hosting completely different forms of life, different rules of physics, different states of matter.
And if the size and shape of reality are determined dynamically by the matter present, and there are 36 different dimensional configurations teeming with varied life, well, the obvious puzzle is why human perception is completely oblivious to the other 35.
Which brings us to the core mechanism driving the philosophy of this entire text, God's spatial array.
Yes, the spatial array is described as this vast divine system designed to keep all life forms strictly confined to their specific lanes.
And what's the purpose of that?
Well, the ultimate overarching goal of this massive sorting mechanism is mathematical perfection. The text claims the array ensures that the entire universe's positive energy and negative energy always equal exactly zero.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that zero-sum equation, because the text explains that the array separates yin and yang.
Right, the positive and negative spaces.
Yeah, so positive spaces like Earth, which is our human world, but also higher operational realms it calls the 1,000-year world and the 10,000-year world. These are kept entirely separate from negative antimatter spaces.
And those negative spaces include realms the text refers to as dreams, Elysium, and the celestial islands.
And the fundamental law of the spatial array is that the inhabitants of these positive and negative spaces must remain completely ignorant of each other.
And the necessity of that ignorance makes total sense when you consider the energy equation we just talked about. I mean, if matter and antimatter interact without strict controls, the result is violent annihilation.
Oh, true.
So the separation isn't just about distance, it's about preventing a chaotic blending of positive and negative forces that would ruin the universal zero-sum balance.
But the method used to enforce this separation is honestly incredibly grounded. I mean, the barrier keeping us isolated isn't millions of light years of empty void.
No, it's not out there in deep space.
The barrier is written right into our biology. And here's where it gets really interesting. I found this to be the most compelling part of Xu Feng's argument. To keep humans perfectly anchored to Earth, perfectly confined to our specific positive matter lane within the spatial array.
Our physical senses are strictly capped.
Yes. And the text gives precise data points, like human hearing is hard capped between 20 and 20,000 hertz, and human vision is strictly capped between 400 and 700 nanometers on the electromagnetic spectrum.
Right, the text points to these specific ceilings and floors of our sensory perception as the literal walls of our cosmic prison. Anything operating above or below those frequencies is just completely invisible and inaudible to us.
I have to admit, my immediate reaction when reading those numbers was to push back a little, because science has a very robust explanation for our sensory limits.
Oh, absolutely. Evolutionary biology.
Right. We usually look at those numbers and say, well, we see those specific spectrums of light and we hear those specific frequencies because those were the exact ranges most useful for our ancestors to track prey, find water, avoid predators on the African savanna.
Sure, our senses evolved for survival, not as a deliberate cage.
Exactly. But Xu Feng of Life Chanyuan flips that narrative entirely. He frames those exact biological constraints not as lucky survival traits, but as a deliberate cosmic fence.
It's a really profound shift in perspective. By restricting human sensory input to such a narrow physical band, the array forces our minds to fixate entirely on physical illusory things.
So we don't look up, basically.
Exactly. It ensures we remain so preoccupied with the visible material world that we never realize the other 35 dimensions are operating all around us.
It's the exact same logic behind putting blinders on a racehorse.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, you strap those leather flaps to the sides of the horse's head, so its field of vision is restricted solely to the dirt track directly in front of it.
Right.
If you take the blinders off, and the horse suddenly perceives the massive stadium, the screaming crowds, the chaos of the other animals, it might panic and completely abandon the race.
The blinders keep the horse locked into its designated lane. And in this framework, human beings are the horse.
Wow.
But, and this is key, we have to view the spatial array not as an act of cruelty, but as an act of necessary quarantine designed for cosmic order.
A quarantine for our own good.
Essentially, yes. Consider the psychological ramifications if those biological blinders were suddenly dissolved.
Yep.
If, right in this moment, your hearing suddenly expanded vastly beyond 20,000 hertz and your vision shifted past 700 nanometers.
To perceive antimatter entities from the negative spaces moving through your room.
Exactly. The human mind, burdened by its current operating system, would just shatter under the weight of that cosmic awareness.
We would be entirely incapacitated. I mean, you wouldn't be able to hold down a job, raise a family, interact with the physical elements of Earth.
No, the sheer volume of overlapping dimensional reality would drive us insane.
The human world would collapse into total chaos.
Therefore, the spatial array limits our thinking to the material, to the visible, and to basic earthly associations. It allows us to comfortably and peacefully fulfill our designated role within our specific tier of the universe without accidentally disrupting the sum-zero balance of the broader cosmos.
Fenced in by our own biology. It's wild to think the spatial reality we are allowed to perceive is deliberately, shockingly tiny. But then, Xu Feng's text pivots to show us how our specific human fence compares to the rest of the life in the universe.
And let me tell you, when you map it out, it is a profoundly humbling comparison.
Seriously. It strips away a lot of human arrogance.
It really does. In the logic of the spatial array, the volume of your space equates directly to your degree of limitation. The larger your designated space, the higher your absolute degree of freedom.
Right, the author lays out this literal hierarchy of freedom, and we start down at the bottom, think of an earthworm.
An earthworm is entirely stuck within the soil. That dark, dense dirt is its entire universe.
Right. Then a fish has slightly more mobility, but it is fundamentally restricted to a body of water. An eagle has a much wider purview, restricted to the sky and the cliffs. A tiger dominates a jungle, but it cannot leave it.
And then there are human beings.
Yeah, we like to think of ourselves as masters of the planet, but realistically, we are restricted to the insides of our homes, the borders of our cities, the jurisdictions of our nations.
And the text explicitly states that because of these severe spatial limits, animals are pitiful compared to humans.
Yeah.
I mean, the spatial freedom of fish experiences is a fraction of what a human enjoys.
Sure.
However, once the perspective pans out to the cosmic scale, the text argues that humans are unimaginably pitiful compared to celestials.
Just think about the physical footprint of your own life for a second. Think about your daily commute. You wake up inside a box your bedroom, you walk out to your driveway and get into a slightly smaller moving box your car.
Your car, right?
You travel down a designated strip of pavement to arrive at a much larger box your office building. Then you sit down inside a cubicle, which is just another box.
Box after box.
Over the course of an entire lifetime, the actual physical territory you will occupy on this one single planet is almost microscopic compared to the scale of the universe.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Xu Feng is demanding we change our entire definition of what freedom actually is. We're so conditioned to define freedom as a political or social concept.
Yeah, we argue over freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, human rights.
But this text measures freedom purely by spatial mobility. True freedom has nothing to do with what laws or governments govern your society. It is entirely about your dimensional jurisdiction.
That concept completely rewires how you measure progress. I mean, your ability to literally move through the 36 spaces is the measure of your spiritual evolution.
Exactly. And the text notes that even the freest beings, the celestials, are still not completely unburdened. They are heavily restricted to what the author calls the celestial islands.
So even they have a box.
Yes. Only gods possess unrestricted space, allowing them to traverse the entirety of the array. But there is a massive caveat to that power.
Yeah.
Even gods must obey the local limitations of whatever specific space they decide to visit.
That detail is vital for understanding the rigidity of the spatial array, right? If a god decides to visit the human dimension of Earth, they can't simply rewrite the physical laws of this space while they're here.
No, they have to play by Earth's biological and physical rules. The ultimate authority doesn't break the local rules, because doing so would inject chaos into the system and fracture the perfect positive and negative energy balance the array was built to protect.
Wow. Okay, so we have thoroughly established our position near the bottom of this massive cosmic hierarchy. We are fenced in biologically by our sight and hearing. We are limited spatially to our small geographic boxes, and we are energetically anchored to this 3D positive matter Earth.
Firmly stuck.
Firmly stuck. So the inevitable question for you listening right now, and the primary focus of the rest of the text, is how do we get out? Like, how does a human being break out of the spatial array?
This is really the climax of Xu Feng's philosophy. And the methodology he provides is, well, it's simultaneously beautifully simple in theory and terrifyingly difficult in practice.
Right.
He argues that physical escape is completely impossible without a fundamental prior change in consciousness.
The author uses a really striking metaphor to illustrate this. He calls it the pig analogy.
Yes, the pig analogy.
Let's say there is a pig living in a pen, and this pig somehow desires to become a human. So it manages to break the lock on the gate and escapes its physical confinement. It has successfully broken out of its spatial limitation.
Right, but the physical escape accomplishes nothing on its own.
Exactly, because it still has the brain, the consciousness, and the ingrained instincts of a pig. What happens to that pig out in the human world? It doesn't know how to forage outside of a trough. It doesn't know how to navigate traffic. It doesn't understand human society.
It will either die out in the wild from exposure, or eventually, driven by hunger and habit, it will wander right back into the safety of the pen.
Yeah, the physical environment changed, but the internal operating system didn't.
The pig remains a pig, regardless of where it stands. The text uses this to argue that to escape the human space, you must first consciously, deeply decide not to be human anymore. You cannot bring human consciousness into a higher dimension.
So what does this all mean when applied to our actual lives? Well, it means shedding human modes of thinking completely.
Entirely.
The text explicitly demands that an individual must abandon their attachments to family, to political parties, to religion, and to nations. Xuefeng writes that you cannot jump out of the three realms, which in this context refers to the cyclical domains of earthly existence, desire, and physical form we are trapped within, if you are still emotionally and conceptually bound by those earthly labels.
This raises an incredibly heavy question about the nature of identity. I mean, everything that currently defines you as a person, your passport, your religious faith, your role as a parent or a child, your political activism, all of these are constructs engineered specifically for the human space.
They are the invisible bars reinforcing the spatial array.
Exactly. If you hold on to them, you remain mathematically and spiritually anchored to this earthly dimension.
Okay, I really have to push back on the reality of this because it sounds dangerously close to total isolation.
I know it does.
To achieve this ultimate dimensional freedom, to ascend to a higher plane, you essentially have to willingly alienate yourself from every single relationship, every institution, and every structural label that makes the human experience meaningful. You have to stop caring about your own family. You have to stop caring about the laws of your country. It's asking us to become fundamentally inhuman while still living in a human society.
I see the tension there, and it is undoubtedly the heaviest lift the text demands. But Xuefeng frames this not as nihilism, but as a necessary energetic transaction.
An energetic transaction.
Right, it demands absolute inner transformation before any outward ascension can possibly happen. You essentially have to download and install the operating system of the thousand-year world into your mind while you are still trapped running on human hardware.
And the method the text lays out to achieve this installation is incredibly systematic. First, you have to rigorously learn about a higher space, like the thousand-year world.
Step 1.
Right. Second, you have to mimic the lifestyle, the detachment, and the consciousness of the beings that live there. You literally practice acting like a celestial being during your morning commute.
You are actively overriding your human reflexes with celestial ones.
But the final step is the most drastic. You have to pay off all your earthly debts. And he doesn't just mean clearing your mortgage or zeroing out your credit cards.
No, it's much broader.
He means returning absolutely everything you own to society, achieving a state of possessing literally nothing, so that your energetic footprint in the human realm equals absolute zero. Once you are entirely debt-free, both financially and emotionally, you accumulate spiritual provisions, and only then can you ascend directly to a higher heaven, bypassing the normal biological cycle of decay.
It all comes back to that zero-sum equation we mentioned earlier. You are balancing your personal mathematical equation to zero within the human realm. You are severing the energetic tethers.
Because if you owe nothing,
If you owe nothing to the human world, no taxes, no familial obligations, no property, the human world can no longer mathematically hold you. The spatial array recognizes your human equation is zero, and the quarantine lifts.
man, it is such a radically disruptive way to view the purpose of our lives. It takes everything we are taught to strive for, owning a home, building a legacy, forming deep attachments, and reclassifies them as the very weight sinking us to the bottom of the cosmic ocean.
It really does.
Which brings us right back to where we started today. I want you to look around your immediate environment one more time. Look at the chair you're sitting in, the screen you might be looking at, the sounds of traffic outside, or the hum of your refrigerator.
It feels incredibly solid. It feels like the ultimate undeniable truth of existence.
But how much of what you consider your absolute unshakable reality is just the spatial array doing exactly what it was designed to do, filtering out 35 other dimensions, capping your senses, and keeping you perfectly comfortable, perfectly distracted, and perfectly contained in your designated biological tier?
It forces us to ask, are we just the pigs, sitting comfortably in the pen, completely oblivious to the vast farm operating around us? I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to chew on today based on everything we've explored from Swiffing of Life Genuine.
Okay.
Imagine if your consciousness shifted completely tonight. Let's say you went to sleep, and overnight you successfully adopted the exact mindset, the absolute detachment, and the operating system of a being from the thousand-year world. When you woke up tomorrow morning in your normal bed, would your current human life feel like an unbearable, suffocating prison? Or would the walls of your reality simply vanish, leaving you completely free?
Wow. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of our existence. Keep looking closely at the boundaries of your world, keep asking why they are there, and never stop questioning what might be waiting just on the other side of your own biological blinders. We'll catch you next time.